Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. We are live now.
Wi bionqua natasuis Candice Testa, qua napiquatu natai mashontiget. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Candice Testa from the Mashantucket Pequot Tribal Nation and speaking from our ancestral lands of Mashantucket within the state of Connecticut. As part of the Cultural Survival staff, I would like to extend a warm welcome to our panelists and the audience to this webinar on Rematriation, bringing home our past, present, and future. Now, before we begin, I'd like to do a little bit of housekeeping. We do have interpretation available. It is in English, Spanish, and Bahasa Indonesian. To access the interpretation, click on the world icon in the bottom navigation bar to choose your language. This event is being streamed live on Cultural Survival's Facebook page and YouTube page. It is also being recorded and will be posted later on www.cs.org and our YouTube page so you can watch it again or share it with those who are unable to attend live. You can learn more about cultural survival by visiting www.cs.org. You can also follow on our Instagram and Facebook at Cultural Survival and Blue Sky at CSORG. If you would like to support the work of Cultural Survival, you can make a donation at cs.org/donate so we can continue to do this very important work. Question and answers will take place at the end of the presentation if time permits, so please use the Q&A feature to ask your questions. So this webinar is organized by Cultural Survival. For those of you who are with us for the first time, I would like to tell you that we are an Indigenous-led nonprofit organization based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. We have been working to protect the rights of Indigenous people and support their self-determination, cultures, and political resilience since 1972. Cultural Survival envisions a future that respects and honors the inherent rights and dynamic cultures of Indigenous peoples, deeply and richly interwoven in lands, languages, spiritual traditions, and artistic expressions, rooted in self-determination and self-governance. We do this through our four-pronged approach: grant-making, advocacy, capacity building, and communications. I want to thank our panelists who generously agreed to share their stories with us. They wrote about their works on rematriation for our latest issue of Cultural Survival Quarterly. If you have not had a chance to read their stories, I strongly invite you to do so. In the words of our director, Amy Robinson, within our most recent Cultural Survival Quarterly, she says, "Rematriation, bringing home our past, present, and future, highlights examples of those working tirelessly to reverse the negative impacts of colonization and to reclaim what rightfully belongs to us for past, present, and future generations. Rematriation encompasses the many ways that Indigenous people are reclaiming our homelands, languages, lifeways, knowledge systems, cultural practices, sacred objects, and ancestral remains. Currently, museums, libraries, private collectors, and other institutions worldwide, including the Catholic Church, continue to hold millions of stolen items and ancestral remains that belong to our communities. As communities and Indigenous-led organizations actively reclaim territories and resources back through advocacy, purchasing land and items, and reviving languages and cultural practices, Cultural Survival is proud to support this work through grant-making, capacity building, advocacy, and storytelling. As part of this support, we have invited today 4 Indigenous leaders who are protecting ancestral sites and revitalizing traditional foodways, governance and ceremonies, teaching and documenting language arts, rituals, mapping territories and restoring ancient burials, demanding and returning ancestral sacred objects, challenging the authority of archaeology and colonial systems, and reclaiming their cultural heritage and spiritual connections. And they are also reviving communal gardening traditions, transmitting cultural knowledge across generations, and creating healing, inclusive spaces, rooting in reciprocity within the land. Now, I have the great pleasure of introducing our panelists. We have Izira Lopez Sanchez, and she is a new Savi Mixtec woman and a speaker of the Tuan Savi language. She holds a degree in international relations and a special focus on the rights of Indigenous peoples and the repatriation of cultural heritage and ancestral remains to their land. Her work is highly active. She co-directs the projects of Savi collection around the world. She seeks to document Mixtec cultural heritage in international museums and founded Tuanvi Beautiful Words, an initiative to create and disseminate contents in her native language to raise awareness, especially among youth, about its importance. Her career has been recognized with awards such as the State Youth Award and the Atane Award, in addition to having received research fellowships from institutions in the Netherlands and the United States. Next is Lauren Peters. She's also known as Niponwas, Dunapas, or Sun Turtle. She is an enrolled member of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe and belongs to the Bear Clan. She leads a Corn Sister Circle, maintaining a traditional Three Sisters garden on her tribal farm, and she paddles canoe, teaches yoga with her community. A traditional Eastern blanket dancer, she has danced her entire life. A mother of two young sons, she recently completed her MBA in Paris. Her passion and core identity is rooted in working for her community, rematriating land and seeds, and helping others. She skillfully walks in two worlds, drawing on her background from nearly 2 decades in corporate America while living in New York, all while remaining grounded in her traditions. Today, she consults for Native and tribal businesses to fund and support community projects across the Northeast. Next up is Dr. Crystal A. Cavalier Keck. She, her is a citizen of Okanichi Band of the Saponi Nation and a co-founder and CEO of Seven Directions of Service, an Indigenous-led nonprofit advancing rights of nature in North Carolina. An adjunct professor at Salem College, she holds a doctorate in organizational leadership with research focus on missing and murdered Indigenous women in relation to energy projects. A former intelligence analyst for the Department of Defense and Homeland Security, she now leads advocacy efforts against pipelines, co-authors rights of nature legislation, and was awarded the 2022 Frac Tracker Community Sentinel Award for Environmental Stewardship. She also serves as chapter director of the 17 Rivers American Indian Movement, the first woman in North Carolina to hold this role, and leads the Native American Caucus in the North Carolina Democratic Party. Next up is Taufik Rama Wijaya, is a young activist from the Mamasa Regency, West Sulawesi, who advocates for Indigenous rights, environmental protection, and government transparency. He serves as a youth coordinator for the Indigenous Peoples Alliance of the Archipelago, AMAN, where he amplifies the voices of local communities. His activism includes fighting corruption in the Mamasa market case, challenging weak law enforcement, and protesting destructive sea sand mining. Alongside his advocacy, Taufik is a cultural documenter. His article on the Tedong tradition was published in Cultural Survival Quarterly, reflecting his commitment to preserving Mamasa heritage. Known for being critical and outspoken, he remains deeply rooted in his cultural identity while pushing for social and environmental justice. I am truly honored to be in your presence and to share space with you. I would like to provide the space for you to welcome to please introduce yourself and tell us what rematriation means for you and your community. So to say that again, please introduce yourself and briefly tell us what rematriation means to you and your community. And I'll start with Izara.
Tandi, kusini ni kaani tong sabi kimimita, ijo ni horencha, nijo ni nyu ni kacho. Te kusini ni kaani hahenda, da na i jiki ana i naguangue ni nyuni. Hola a todos, muy buenos días. Los saludé en Tungsabi, la lengua de la lluvia. Mi nombre es Isaira y estoy viviendo en mi territorio, en el New Sabi. He trabajado en cuanto a la concientización de la repatriación, es decir, la devolución de nuestros ancestros que están en museos internacionales, en restos ancestrales y en elementos culturales. Y específicamente, ¿qué se refiere la rematriación con nosotros? Bueno, es el de que nuestros ancestros regresen a casa, en cómo hacerlo, pero también en cómo el Yusabio, cómo nuestra comunidad debe estar preparado para ello. Entonces, he trabajado en cuanto a la conciencia de que no solo son objetos, no solo son piedras, no solo son cuestiones que se pueden ver detrás de museos, sino que forman parte de nosotros, que son importantes y que necesitan estar en casa para una continuidad cultural, ¿no? Todo esto es también consecuencia, perdón, todo esto es consecuencia de la larga consecuencia de colonización que ha vivido el New Sabi, ¿no? Estamos en México, estamos en Oaxaca y las leyes no son favorables para los pueblos originarios en cuando hablamos de repatriación, rematriación o restitución. Y bueno, en pocas palabras, pues la rematriación significa que nuestros ancestros puedan volver a casa, que puedan volver con nosotros para una continuidad cultural e incluso para un regreso a la tierra si es necesario cuando hablamos de restos ancestrales, ¿no? Nuestros ancestros necesitan descansar, necesitan estar en paz, necesitan estar en su territorio y a eso se refiere en cuanto a la rematriación o repatriación cuando trabajamos de este lado.
Thank you for those powerful words. And next is Loren. Please introduce yourself and tell us what rematriation means for you and your community.
Hui Kwasan, Wani Kisak, Natusuis, Napawas Tnepas, Nutomas Masapi, Nuwapanam, Katapatanamu. You're in the light. Good day. My name is Sun Turtle, or my English name is Lauren Peters. I'm from Mashpee. I'm Mashpee Wampanoag. And rematriation to me, I can't speak for my community because we all, you know, I can only speak from myself and how I think. Some people may be more extreme than others or less. But I know how I was raised, and I know I can speak from my place and the elders who taught me. But rematriation to me is restoring the balance. This is something that I learned long before the word rematriation, this new buzzword, but living in balance with our Earth Mother. That's something that was taught to me by my grandfather. Slow Turtle John Peters, our supreme sachem of the Wampanoag Nation. him as well as my aunties, and my father of just always living in balance. And rematriation to me is really restoring that balance and bringing back the things that um, make our land whole. Um, and I believe it's really led by women, as in a Wampanoag woman from a matrilineal tribe. Um, this is not something that is new to us. We know that the balance comes from our women. We know that the women are the leaders who are able to step into their soft power and create that balance as nurturers and life givers. And I believe that rematriation is also something that we do to bring balance for our future generations, which is reliant on our women continuing to care for and nurture the lives that we bring into this world, whether it be food or children, um, and the food that we need to nourish those children for those generations to be whole. Um, thank you.
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you for reminding us of the importance of women within our matrilineal and matrilocal communities here in the Northeast. Thank you. Next is Tawfik Rama. Would you prefer to go by Tawfik or Rama?
Rama.
Thank you. And same question for you. Please introduce yourself and tell us briefly what rematriation means to you and your community.
Oke, baik. Terima kasih banyak. Pertama, perkenalkan, nama saya Taufik Ramawijaya, tapi saya lebih sering disapa Rama. Kemudian saya berasal dari komunitas adat bernama Malakbo. Itu adalah salah satu komunitas adat eh, di dalam federasi yang kami sebut Pitu Ulun Nasalu Kondo Sapata Wahisa Palelean, Federasi Masyarakat Adat di Mamasa, Sulawesi Barat. Nah, bagi kami sendiri, remi, remitrasi berarti itu pulang ke rahim ibu. Karena untuk masyarakat adat di Mamasa, kami menganggap bahwa wilayah adat kami itu adalah ibu kami. Kami lahir dari situ, kami makan dari situ, dan kami bertahan hidup dari situ. Dan menurut kami, remitrasi sendiri adalah proses mengembalikan tanah, air, dan budaya kepada fungsi sakralnya, serta meneguhkan kembali hubungan kami dengan leluhur dan juga generasi hidup yang ada sekarang. Eh, Bagi kami sendiri, proses-proses revitalisasi budaya melalui pengajaran bahasa, seni, dan ritual serta pemetaan wilayah adat itu sebenarnya gunanya adalah untuk melindungi hutan kami yang juga kami sebut sebagai ibu, serta beberapa restorasi terhadap kuburan-kuburan tua yang kami lakukan melalui dukungan dari teman-teman juga. Karena menurut kami saat ini penting untuk menjaga hal-hal tersebut di mana dunia semakin maju dan modern. Sehingga kami tidak bisa lagi memagari generasi-generasi muda kami dari pengaruh modernitas. Sehingga kami perlu banyak melakukan hal-hal seperti ini agar generasi muda kami kembali mengenal adat dan budayanya. Melalui remitrasi ini sendiri kami berharap kegiatan-kegiatan yang bisa mendorong minat teman-teman generasi muda adat khususnya di Mamasa dan Indonesia ini agar kembali mengenal ajaran-ajaran leluhurnya. Dan itu yang sedang kami lakukan sekarang. Eh, Bagi kami, remitrasi itu memulihkan hubungan spiritual baik itu dengan tanah, air, dan masyarakat kami. Karena kami mendapatkan banyak tempat sekarang, khususnya di Mamasa, eh, anak-anak muda tidak lagi berminat untuk melirik adat dan budaya sebagai pandangan hidup. Sementara dalam ajaran kebudayaan kami, eh, di dalam aturan-aturan kehadatan kami bukan hanya soal hubungan antara manusia dengan Tuhan atau leluhur, tapi yang lebih banyak diajarkan adalah bagaimana cara kita menghargai alam dan juga menghargai sesama manusia. Mungkin itu saja dari kami dulu tentang remitrasi ini. Terima kasih.
Thank you for those wise words about wisdom and returning to our mothers. And next is Crystal. Please introduce yourself and tell us what rematriation means for you and your community.
Thank you. Mikuda Minchin, Kiyohe, Nahompi Pise, Mima Crystal, Mima Yesa, Mima Okanichi Saponi, Mima Mebin, Watiwa. So my English name is Crystal Cavalier, and I'm a citizen of the Okanichi Band of the Saponi Nation. And for me and my community, rematriation is more than returning land or artifacts. It's about returning to our original instructions. It means remembering that our relationship with the land, the waters, and all living beings is not one of ownership, but of kinship. Rematriation restores responsibilities in ways that honor wisdom, that our mothers and grandmothers who have carried the knowledge of planting, ceremony, governance, and the care for the community. While colonization took so much from us, our lands, our language, our burial sites, and that even our ways of relating to one another, rematriation is the process of bringing back balance, care, and reciprocity. It is about ensuring that our people are not treated as relics of the past, but as living nations with the right and responsibility to care for our homelands. For my Okanichi and Saponi people, rematriation means reconnecting with our ancestral villages in Virginia, where we lived for centuries, and now with our homelands in Alamance, Orange, and Caswell County in North Carolina. It means defending sacred sites like Carteret County Burial Site and the burial mounds along the MVP Southgate pipeline path. These are not just historical landmarks. They are resting places of our ancestors, and protecting them is not an optional. It's an act of survival and love. So when I speak of rematriation, I'm speaking of returning to a way of life that places responsibility, ceremony, and relationship at the center. And this is how we are going to heal from generations of loss, and how that we ensure a future where our children and grandchildren know that land and water are not commodities, but relatives. Biluk.
Thank you for your powerful words on re-remembering and creating balance. So now move on to our second question, which is to tell us about the rematriation project that you have been working on to bring back either your ancestral lands, your resources, or culture. And I'll start again with Izaira.
¿Me pueden ayudar con la traducción de la pregunta, por favor?
I'll reread the question. Can you please tell us about the rematriation project that you have been working on to bring back your ancestral lands or resources or culture?
Ok, cuando nosotros abordamos la cuestión de repatriación, rematriación en nuestro territorio, lo trabajamos en la comunidad, con los niños, con la gente joven. Estamos trabajando también con instituciones para que este concepto esté presente dentro de las escuelas o dentro de la gente joven. Y sabemos y somos muy conscientes que quizás esto no tenga un impacto puede ser en 5 o 10 años, pero sabemos que estamos sentando las bases para que esto sea posible en futuros años y quizás nosotros mismos no podamos ver los resultados. Sin embargo, em, las cosas van a cambiar en algunos años y sabemos que quizás no lo veamos, pero nuestra herencia cultural material volverá a casa. Esa es la manera en cómo nosotros estamos trabajando en cuanto a repatriación.
It's very well said. I am in complete agreement. You may not always see the impacts of the work that you do, but just truly knowing that you are having an impact. Thank you. And Loren, the same question. Tell us about the rematriation project that you have been working on to bring back either your ancestral lands, resources, or culture.
So the Corn Sister Circle was born out of need. Our land and our people have been out of balance. When my parents grew up, there were 400 people on the census in Mashpee, my homeland, where we were moved to, where we were all, this was our space. Today, the population is closer to 16,000 people. So in a lifetime, we have seen the fish, the scallops, the resources disappear as our land is encroached upon. When our land is encroached upon, when the land is taken from Indigenous people, that's trauma. The land is our relative. Our relatives are being extinct before our eyes, are no longer part of our flora and fauna. The herring were so plentiful that you could walk on their backs. All the elders tell us this. There were scallops throughout the rivers. And today, we're fighting to survive on our land. We're in a housing crisis. We can no longer afford to live on our land. It is beachfront Cape Cod property lined with multi-million-dollar homes with billionaires, and we are threatened when we do try to keep things alive, like our fishing and hunting. But we have protected those rights. When this happens, our people have lost their way, turning to drugs, alcohol, and suicide. We're also in a simultaneous opioid crisis because we've lost hope. Many people have lost hope. So this project was born out of hope. In 2012, I lost my sister cousin, Danielle Smiling Bear. We were inseparable. We grew up on my aunt's farm that she stewards at the Nation House, 13 acres on Wampanoag territory. When she turned to opioids and later crossed herself over, I knew my life was going to change. I knew I needed to pivot. What I thought was important no longer mattered. And I knew that I needed to do something to preserve our community and our sisters, our sister cousins, and create spaces for healing and connection to our Earth Mother. Because even in this Western society, the American Psychological Association has formally apologized for forcing Western medicine on our people. And they have confirmed that the best course of treatment for our people is cultural preservation. Getting our hands in the dirt, touching the soil, releasing that serotonin, that natural happy that we get, especially when we are touching our seeds that were taken from us 300 years ago during the King Philip War, the bloodiest war ever fought on American soil that no one has heard of. It's not in your history books. These seeds made their way back to us, and they have been a vehicle for this project. Because when you see a seed so tiny grow into something that is 8 feet tall, and you can feed your family, you can change your DNA, you can fight these new diseases, you're empowered. And that helps create confidence and hope. And that is what we need in order to bring back the balance. So we have rematriated our King Philip corn seeds. We also have since rematriated other seeds that were grown in our community in past centuries. And we keep a lot of our traditions alive. When Roger Williams came to our coastline, he noticed our women holding hands and singing our social songs in the garden, in one garden. So we honor that. We continue bringing back our ceremonies as well as our seeds and keeping traditions like gift giving for those who come to the garden alive. And at any given time, we have as many as 4 generations in the garden so that our youngest can learn from our eldest seed keepers.
Wow. Thank you so much, Lauren. Thank you for your voice, your vision, and your project, and sharing your heart with us. So I'd like to move on to ask Rama to answer the second question. Can you tell us about the Rematriation project that you have been working on to bring back your ancestral lands, resources, or culture? So tell us about your project.
Baik, terima kasih Cindy Contesta. Eh, Pertama, saya juga ingin mengajak teman-teman untuk kita mengingat kembali bahwa kolonialisme yang terjadi itu tidak hanya dilakukan 300 tahun yang lalu seperti di Indonesia misalnya, tetapi bagi kami masyarakat adat saat ini juga negara yang kami tempati khususnya di Indonesia masih menjadi kolonial baru di mana banyak sekali tanah-tanah adat kami yang direbut dan dirampas kemudian diklaim oleh negara sebagai tanah negara Dan sampai saat ini kami belum memiliki aturan konstitusi yang jelas tentang pengakuan hukum masyarakat adat di Indonesia khususnya. Dan juga teman-teman, seperti yang kita lihat akhir-akhir ini, eh, kami di Indonesia sendiri sudah lebih dari 14 tahun khususnya di Aliansi Masyarakat Adat Nusantara atau Indigenous Archipelago of Indonesia, Aliansi Masyarakat Adat Nusantara itu melakukan advokasi untuk mendorong mengesahkan Undang-Undang Masyarakat Adat agar pengakuan atas tanah adat kami diakui oleh negara, tetapi sampai saat ini itu juga belum, eh, dari sejak 14 tahun yang lalu sampai saat ini itu belum bisa terwujud. Untuk itu kami juga mengundang solidaritas dari kita semua untuk terus mendorong ini, khususnya kami di Indonesia. Dan selanjutnya tentang proyek rematriasi yang kami lakukan pada tahun 2025, itu kami mendapatkan dukungan dari teman-teman cultural survival, dan kami melakukan banyak kegiatan. Kami melakukan dokumentasi dan pengajaran bahasa, seni, serta ritual di teman-teman masyarakat adat, komunitas masyarakat adat. Juga kami melakukan beberapa pendekatan dengan teman-teman di eh, khususnya anak usia dini dengan memberikan mereka satu pengalaman untuk bercerita tentang masa lalu. Kami menyebutnya di sini Mak Toyolo atau cara orang dulu untuk berdongeng. Kemudian kami juga mendorong pemetaan wilayah adat sebagai salah satu eh, kegiatan untuk melindungi hutan dan sumber daya air kami. Dan yang selanjutnya kami juga melakukan restorasi kuburan leluhur yang kami sebut tedong-tedong, dan itu teman-teman bisa lihat di dalam tulisan saya yang telah dipublis oleh teman-teman Cultural Survival, di mana kuburan ini sendiri adalah eh, cara nenek moyang kami atau ancestor kami itu melakukan penguburan, di mana eh, leluhur-leluhur kami dimasukkan di dalam kayu besar, kemudian dibentuk menyerupai kerbau, eh, dan terbuat dari kayu yang sangat besar dengan kualitas yang tinggi. Kami menyebutnya kayu uru. Tetapi seperti yang kami sebutkan di era kolonialisme, itu terjadi pembakaran, penghilangan, pencabutan eh, identitas masyarakat adat, eh, yang kemudian menghilangkan banyak hal ini. Dan kami masih mendapatkan sisa-sisanya. Itulah yang kemarin saat proyek ini berjalan, kami melakukan eh, membuat atap yang bisa melindungi kayu tersebut karena kayunya sudah sangat tua. Kami membuat atap untuk mengatasi pengaruh krisis iklim dan juga erosi. Juga kami membuat eh, eh, pagar-pagar untuk melindungi itu. Tetapi semua tindakan kami itu melalui protokoler adat yang ketat. Kami menyebutnya sebagai kombongan kalua atau musyawarah adat yang digelar sebelum kegiatan-kegiatan untuk merestorasi kuburan leluhur ini dilakukan. Eh, Mungkin itu saja cerita dari kami tentang kegiatan restorasi yang kami lakukan saat ini. Eh, Proses pemetaan juga sedang kami genjot terus karena di Mamasa sendiri kami memiliki 24 komunitas anggota AMAN atau komunitas adat yang tergabung dalam AMAN. Terima kasih.
Thank you so much for your words and for reminding us that colonization is still happening. It's not a thing of the past. And thank you for sharing your story and your impactful project. And now the next question will go on to Crystal. And it's the same question. Tell us about your rematriation project that you've been working on to bring back either ancestral lands, resources, or culture. Thank you.
Bisay. So like many relatives who spoke before me, we have so much ingrained trauma in our communities. Our people left the community around the 1970s to look for work, to where our community started to dwindle down. We were many farmers, but now we're down to one farmer in the community, and it's getting harder and harder to compete commercially. And we're trying to help the one farmer make the 200-year mark to go down as historic farmer in the community. But since I moved home in 2016, I wanted to give back to my community economically, financially, spiritually, and culturally. And in the last 2 years, we had to fight to keep the land in my family. My mom had a stroke and she just passed away in May. She was manipulated by her husband to sell the land. And after a long fight, we were able to secure the land that has been in our family for over 300 years. We decided to bring mindfulness classes and healing circles to the farm. And we feed the community with our hydroponic tower gardens, but we also teach the community how to grow in the mound methods that our ancestors once did. Our people have deep roots on this land. Since the 1300s, our ancestors lived on lands in now what is Southern Virginia and Halifax and Mecklenburg County. And these lands had our villages, our gardens, council houses, and ceremonial grounds. But by the mid 1700s, after wars, forced removals, and displacement, many of our ancestors resettled in Alamance County. Well, it was Orange County, but now Alamance County, North Carolina. And in the last 2 years, my husband and I, we created the Yesa Farm, which means the people in our language. But these places are not abstract to us. They carry our stories, our languages, our medicines, and they hold our identity as Okanichi Saponi people. So we have two projects that we're working on. One is protecting the Great Trading Path, which is an indigenous trade route that follows Interstate 85. Actually, the 85 was Highway 85 was built on top of that path. But that trade route connected nations from Virginia to Georgia and even further up north and further down south. But for hundreds of years, this path carried commerce, diplomacy, ceremony, and kinship. It is a living piece of history, one of the oldest transportation corridors on this turtle island. And today it's being threatened by proposed Buc-ee's development in Mebane, North Carolina, which is a not just an ordinary gas station and travel plaza. It will sit directly on top of the trading path, one of the villages offside of it. But paving over and erasing this historic cultural landmark. So for us, fighting development like Buc-ee's is not about stopping one development. It's about defending the memory and continuity of our people across time. To build a massive fossil fuel retail outlet on this trail is to erase not only our history, but also our responsibilities to protect the land and water. Buc-ee's represents the logic of a sacrifice zone, treating land as property, but water as a commodity and our ancestors' footsteps as expendable. But we're also defending ancestral resting places across North Carolina, such as the burial site in Carteret County, the burial mounds in the path of the MVP Southgate, and the undocumented burial mounds in Caswell, Rockingham, and Alamance counties. And these are not empty fields, they are final resting places of our ancestors, sacred grounds that hold our history and identity. But our families here are hurting for money. And so they are selling their land that their ancestors held. And these developers come in and they bulldoze, pave over, and ignore. It is an act of violence against our people. in our history. So protecting these sites is an act of rematriation, cultural survival, and a respect for those who came before us. But through these projects, we are building past, present, and future together. It's about ensuring that our children inherit not just a story of erasure, but a living relationship with the land. So this is what it looks like when we say rematriation is climate justice, protecting land and water, not just for survival, but for the dignity of our ancestors and for the future of our grandchildren. So thanks. Thanks so much, Candace.
Thank you, Crystal. Yeah, you just remind me of just how the land is so healing, and I'm so very thankful for you, for your community, that you are creating the path back to the land and um, regenerating those kinship connections that we all deserve and can heal from. So thank you. So the next question, and this one is for you, Isaira. And I would like to ask you, how does rematriation contribute to restoring spiritual relationships with the land, natural resources, and community? So how does this process contribute to restoring the spiritual relationships?
Bueno, muchas gracias por toda la intervención. He tenido la oportunidad de escuchar a cada uno de los participantes en este día, y la verdad es que tenemos una historia distinta, cada pueblo, cada nación, en cada lengua, pero algo que tenemos en común son los rezagos que dejó el colonialismo y cómo este sigue muy presente en la vida de todos nosotros, ¿no? ¿Cómo sana? ¿Cómo contribuye? Bueno, en realidad, la repatriación, el regreso de nuestros ancestros, estamos hablando de una justicia social, ¿no? Estamos abordando desde los derechos de los pueblos originarios, que tenemos el derecho a cuidar y a decidir por el futuro de nuestra herencia cultural material en nosotros o para nosotros, como lo hemos estado trabajando desde el territorio New Sabi en México. Primero, trabajar mucho con la conciencia que nuestra herencia cultural es parte de nosotros. Y también cómo contribuye. En realidad, nosotros no hemos tenido un caso de repatriación exitoso. El gobierno tiene sus propias pautas en cuanto al tema. No hemos tenido un caso de repatriación exitoso, sin embargo, el tema está presente y es necesario para reforjar o para reforzar nuestra identidad cultural, para reforzar quiénes somos, dónde estamos, seguimos aquí presentes con una voz fuerte de decir, nuestra herencia cultural material está afuera, pero estamos aquí y es necesario que vuelva. Es necesario para forzar nuestra identidad, nuestro sentido de pertenencia, ¿no? Entonces, trabajar con el tema ha sido también bastante bonito, bastante eh, favorable, pero también mucha historia detrás porque esta trauma colonial sigue muy presente en la cabeza de las personas mayores. Por ejemplo, cuando nosotros hacemos entrevistas en cuanto al saqueo que hubo, está muy presente, ¿no? Vinieron extranjeros, personas blancas, fueron a tal cueva y se llevaron tal cosa o tal elemento, o está muy presente, ¿no? Incluso con nuestra lengua, ¿no? Cómo ha sido extraída y sin ninguna devolución. Vienen, hacen estudios, hacen trabajo de campo, se van y este no regresa al territorio para las propias comunidades, ¿no? Entonces, ¿cómo ayuda cómo ayuda la repatriación en cuanto a forjar nuestra identidad? Bueno, pues el hecho de decir, tenemos una historia, tenemos una herencia cultural material que está fuera de su lugar de origen, pero que nuestra historia está viva, que esas narrativas están vivas, que ese conocimiento está vivo dentro de la comunidad es importantísimo. Ahora, lograr realmente la devolución de estos elementos podría ser mucho mayor, porque no solamente estamos contribuyendo en reforzar la identidad, sino ahora de decir, hemos logrado o estamos logrando que nuestros ancestros regresen a casa y realmente ayudar con ese espíritu de devolución, el hecho de reforzar quiénes somos es importantísimo dentro de nuestro territorio. Como una de ellas lo ha dicho, nuestro índice de migración está creciendo cada vez más, la gente se está yendo cada vez más. Y realmente nos preocupan mucho los niños porque este conocimiento, entonces, cómo se transmite en casa, ¿no? Como en realidad nosotros estamos trabajando con un colectivo o de manera personal, proyectos personales, pero sí es realmente grave todo lo que el colonialismo sigue presente y seguirá presente, pero necesitamos cambiar las cosas.
Thank you for your words. The same question to Loren. How does rematriation contribute to restoring spiritual relationships with the land, natural resources, and community?
So for me, when we do plant these seeds on land that has been farmed by our ancestors for thousands of years, when you connect your hand to the dirt, you feel that connection to your ancestors, and that remembering comes alive. The instructions for growing this corn, for example, is in our DNA. It's simply remembering that, and our ancestors guide us while we're in the garden. And this is something that I've I learned as a young girl, not just in the garden, but I think the first time was my dad took me out to the woods and told me this is where you go when you don't know what to do. You know, this is where your answers are. Your ancestors are all here. And in those woods of Mashpee, around that swamp that has never been touched by a bulldozer because it's swampland, it is the safest place. It is how our people were able to keep our culture and our traditions alive. You can hear our ancestors sitting council with you on whatever it is that you are going through, that you need advice on, that you need to work through. And even where, no matter where I am in the world, if I have something that I need to work through, it's through the woods and through that land. And that's why it's so important for us to have our land. It's our connection to our ancestors is in the soil, in the seeds, in those woods, in those trees, in that swamp, where everything is dead, but everything is still so alive. And um, and they want us to forget. They want us to forget. They don't want us to remember. They want to make us into people of this century with all of the conveniences and the ease and all of these things that make us forget how to grow our food, how to hunt and fish, how to take care for the land. They want us to forget these things because that means we are no longer have that connection. And that connection is so critical to our future generations and our survival. And we are seeing a lot of change happening right now. And those who get it notice. And Mother Earth is out of balance. Our ancestors told us this, our elders, when they were young, their elders came to them and told them about this time that would happen, this shift. And Mother Earth is sounding the alarm. It's time. The time is now. And if you have your connection, if you're connected to the earth and you're connected to the land that you sit on, you feel this imbalance and you feel that Mother Earth is starved for this connection. Because when we lose our way and we no longer have this reciprocal relationship with our Earth Mother that she needs to continue, Mother Earth will continue to survive. But it's our connection to her and our reciprocal relationship that keeps us alive. And the sooner that people realize that this isn't just some spiritual, this is real. That's the relationship between rematriation and spirituality, from my perspective.
Thank you for your words, Lauren. Rama, the same question is for you. How does rematriation contribute to restoring spiritual relationships with the land, natural resources, and community?
Oke, baik. Terima kasih. Baik. Eh, Kalau kami di Mamasa ini melakukan eh, kegiatan atau proyek rematriasi ini itu dengan beberapa cara seperti yang saya sebutkan tadi bahwa masalah kami sebenarnya adalah banyaknya generasi muda yang sudah kehilangan minat terhadap adat dan budaya karena menurut mereka itu dalam tanda kutip kolot atau ketinggalan zaman, tidak lagi relevan, dan juga begitu banyaknya konsumsi informasi dari media sosial yang membuat generasi muda ini semakin tercerabut dari akarnya. Eh, Makanya kami membuat program untuk mereka. Seperti yang saya sebutkan tadi bahwa kegiatan yang kami lakukan adalah dengan mengajak mereka kembali mengingat bagaimana orang-orang tua dulu itu berdongeng. Karena di dalam kebudayaan Mamasa kami menyebutnya sebagai tulak tomatua atau kami menyebutnya Mak Toyolo, cerita-cerita dari masa lalu yang kemudian di dalam cerita-cerita tersebut diisi dengan nilai-nilai dan norma-norma tentang bagaimana adat istiadat itu berjalan. Seperti itulah cara kami mengingatkan teman-teman generasi muda ini untuk kembali mengingat bahwa leluhur kita punya satu eh, cara dan nilai yang eh, sudah dibangun dari sejak dahulu kala untuk menjaga nilai-nilai kemanusiaan. Karena sebagai informasi juga kepada teman-teman semua bahwa di Mamasa sendiri kami tidak pernah mengenal istilah kerajaan atau negara. Kami menganut asas yang disebut federasi, di mana eh, komunitas-komunitas adat di Mamasa itu satu dan yang lainnya setara. Hanya saja dibagi dengan tugas dan fungsi yang berbeda-beda. Ada yang menjalankan fungsi intelijen, ada yang menjalankan fungsi sebagai pengadil, ada yang menjalankan fungsi sebagai angkatan perang. Semua komunitas dari 25 komunitas adat yang ada di Mamasa punya peranannya masing-masing, tetapi mereka setara. Mereka punya eh, dan inilah yang kami sebut sebagai demokrasi mula-mula di Mamasa. Kami menyebutnya bahwa mungkin sebelum teman-teman Yunani punya demokrasi, kami di Mamasa sudah mengenal dahulu kala apa yang disebut sebagai demokrasi. Karena proses penyelesaian masalah yang kami lakukan dari nenek moyang sampai sekarang juga masih memberlakukan itu. Di mana kami menyebutnya bahwa semua bisa diselesaikan dengan pembicaraan, tidak perlu ada kekerasan. Dan ini yang kami ajarkan kepada teman-teman generasi muda kami. Lalu selanjutnya proses pemetaan. Pemetaan wilayah adat yang kami lakukan dan kami godok saat ini adalah untuk memastikan kembali di mana batas-batas wilayah kehadatan kami. Karena eh, kekurangan eh, kekurangan pendahulu-pendahulu kita tentu mereka eh, mematok batas-batas wilayah itu dengan batas alam, misalnya kayu, sungai, tetapi akan ada perubahan. Perubahan iklim itu akan merubah bentang-bentang alam ini. Untuk itu, kami generasi muda saat ini, generasi muda adat di Mamasa, menyatakan kami perlu mendigitalisasi peta-peta wilayah adat ini agar satu waktu nanti teman-teman generasi ke depan tetap bisa tahu di mana sebenarnya batas wilayah adatnya mereka. Dan selanjutnya proses restorasi kuburan-kuburan yang ada, kuburan-kuburan tua yang saya sebut bahwa kami hanya mendapat sisanya, sisa-sisanya. Kami sangat beruntung, teman-teman di Mamasa mungkin berbeda dengan teman-teman yang lain, tapi kami sangat beruntung karena di dalam tedong-tedong itu kami masih mendapati kerangka-kerangka mayat leluhur kami. Dari situ kami tahu bahwa oh iya kami pernah ada di sini. Dan dengan cara itu, dengan cara kami melindungi kuburan-kuburan tua ini, kami dapat mengajak teman-teman generasi yang ada sekarang untuk datang melihat lagi bahwa inilah nenek moyang kita, mereka pernah ada dan hidup di tanah ini, kemudian menjadi penjaga dari alam kita ini. Karena untuk kami sendiri, aturan-aturan kehadatan itu masih dijunjung tinggi. Kami bahkan cenderung lebih mendengarkan hukum adat daripada hukum negara di daerah kami. Kami akan lebih takut dijatuhi hukum adat daripada kami takut di penjara. Untuk itu, kesadaran-kesadaran yang masih ada saat ini, kami ingin coba untuk merangkul lebih banyak teman-teman generasi muda. Kami tidak ingin generasi alfa dan beta selanjutnya tidak lagi mengenal eh, kearifan-kearifan lokal yang dimiliki oleh leluhur-leluhur kami ini. Kami sangat bangga menjadi salah satu menjadi komunitas masyarakat adat yang masih terikat kuat dengan eh, para ansektor atau nenek moyang kami. Karena kebudayaan kami berjalan dengan yang kami sebut tulasan atau kami menyalurkan kebudayaan kami lewat bicara. Kami tidak tahu menulis. Kami tidak tahu menulis. Di dalam kebudayaan kami, kami tidak bisa menulis. Dan kami hanya bisa bercerita. Dan untuk itu juga kegiatan remitrasi ini terus kami galang dengan terus mengajak seluruh elemen masyarakat dan juga pemerintah utamanya. eh, karena bagaimanapun juga kami butuh pengakuan. Kami butuh pengakuan dari pemerintah. Selama pengakuan itu tidak kami miliki, maka kami akan terus terancam. Kami terancam dengan tambang, kami terancam dengan eh, direbutnya wilayah-wilayah adat kami. Ini akan semakin membuat kami tercerabut dari akar. Karena yang kami hadapi sekarang di Indonesia, sebagai informasi kepada teman-teman bahwa Indonesia ini dianggap sebagai daerah tambang yang punya banyak cadangan nikel. Dan itu sedang menimpa kami, hampir seluruh daerah dan seluruh komunitas masyarakat adat. Kami bertabrakan dengan banyak korporasi, baik itu tambang maupun korporasi yang datang membawa ide-ide baru seperti eh, kebun monokultur yang kemudian merebut banyak lahan kami. Dan ini yang sedang kami pertahankan saat ini. Untuk itu kami perlu banyak solidaritas dari kita semua perlu banyak dukungan dan kami menggalang juga teman-teman untuk bagaimana kita eh, kembali ke komunitas adat kita masing-masing dan juga menjaga wilayah-wilayah adat yang masih kita miliki. Terima kasih, Kandis.
Thank you so much for being so generous with the sharing of your culture and worldview. The same question goes to you, Crystal. And how does rematriation contribute to restoring spiritual relationships with the land, natural resources, and your community?
Thank you, Rama. That was inspiring hearing what you said. So as Indigenous people here in the United States, we carry this reality of walking in two worlds. On one hand, we live in a society shaped by Western laws, economics, education systems that do not see or respect our ways of knowing. And then on the other hand, we are responsible to our teachings, our original teachings. But rematriation helps us hold these worlds together, these two worlds together. It kind of reminds us of a way that we have to navigate the courts, the government, the institutions that defend our lands and rights. And then the deeper responsibility is to the spiritual laws that come from the land itself. And those teachings guide us in how to plant, how we gather, how we protect our sacred sites, how we educate both our own relatives who are Indigenous and our allies and accomplices. It's not easy walking into worlds. It requires us to constantly push back against extraction and misuse of our language and our culture and ceremonies. And another part of rematriation is just the education. And again, like our relatives, like Izara said, we face similar struggles where our language and culture and teachings are being extracted and shared with people who are not part of the community or who do not see our values the same. And this extraction continues the same patterns of colonization, taking what is sacred without permission, without relationship, and without responsibility. Rematriation teaches us that our language and culture are not things to be consumed. They are living relatives that come with obligations, and they're not meant to be taken. They are meant to be honored, protected, and given back to the community. So we continue to educate that working with our teachings is not about possession, but about reciprocity. It's about returning to the land, to the original instructions, to give back, uplift, and care for one another for the knowledge that sustains us. When we plant traditional seeds here in our Yesa farm, we are not simply farming, we are caring for the teachings of our grandmothers who saved those seeds and entrusted them to us. And that is what I value most, is the time I spent with my grandparents planting in our fields. But we gather medicines and we are remembering the prayers, the songs, and the ceremonies that make plants more than commodities. They become healers and teachers. When we defend our rivers from the pipelines and stand against bulldozers at our burial grounds, those actions are spiritual too. They are prayers in motion, acts of love for the land and for the ancestors who walked before us. So rematriation is really powerful because I've come to understand that it has restored relationships within my community. And the ceremonies that I have learned from my husband, who was so generous in teaching me my forgotten ways, brings people together to remember our responsibilities. Because it was not here in my time that we could talk about being Indigenous very openly. We would be murdered or, ran out of town. So we are relearning the food ways that reconnect us with our elders. And our elders are starting to die out, and they carry the knowledge of how to prepare and preserve and share. But remembering the language that was stolen from us, I'm just now starting to relearn really ties us back because our words are in the names of the rivers and the animals and the winds and the directions. And these are not just cultural practices, they are our spiritual obligations that strengthen our communities and heal intergenerational wounds caused by displacement and colonization. Because you see here on the South, in the East, we were first contact tribes. And through this rematriation, we are remembering that the health of the land and the health of the people are inseparable. And when our waters run clean and our bodies and spirits are strong, and when our sacred sites are protected, our ancestors rest and our children know that they come from this way. And again, rematriation is such an important word. And to tell you the truth, we don't even have a word for that in our language, rematriation, because we never had to do that. But rematriation now is about survival and it's about restoring balance, a spiritual wholeness between the land, the natural resources, and community. Thank you, Candace.
Thank you. Thank you all. My heart is full. I am so inspired for the future, knowing that there are so many people out there who are so passionate about their communities and their projects and reconnecting with the land. And I have one final question for you before we turn it over to the audience to ask questions. And my question, I'll start with Izara again. How can rematriation processes be supported? What needs to happen?
Muchas gracias. Bueno, en primer lugar, eh, estos procesos de repatriación, rematriación también necesitan salir de la comunidad, en primer lugar, y cómo gentes externos pueden apoyar en cuanto a esto. Si bien es cierto, se necesita de dinero, son muy caros, tanto como investigación, como todo lo que conlleva reforzar ciertos estudios, etcétera, ¿no? Pero principalmente, cómo pueden ayudar las organizaciones o agentes externos. En primer lugar, yo pienso que es respetando y preguntando si es posible acompañar en este proceso y de qué manera hacerlo. ¿Cuáles son las condiciones que las comunidades ponen, por ejemplo, y cuáles son las condiciones que la organización puede tener, ¿no? Porque puede salir algo por ahí que no sea correcto y que las organizaciones se puedan aprovechar de ello. Y entonces volvemos a caer en un error, ¿no? Y también hoy en día la manera en cómo los museos internacionales se están involucrando se está viendo y comienza a verse cada vez más, pero también siento que no saben qué hacer, no saben cómo hacer el proceso de devolución, en tanto que las comunidades se vean realmente beneficiadas. Ocurre en México, eh, y lo vivimos de experiencia propia, de que el Estado salió benefactor de una situación en vez de la comunidad en donde realmente tenía que regresar un resto ancestral, ¿no? Entonces, ¿cómo pueden apoyar? Bueno, pues respetando, siendo empáticos con la situación, respetando las maneras de pensar de los pueblos originarios, en qué quieren, cómo lo quieren, dónde lo quieren, eh, y, e involucrándose con conexiones, ¿no? Am, Nuevas aperturas en museos, aperturas en tanto el pensamiento y en la manera de también cómo pensamos, porque se ha visto mucho que pues no comparten la misma idea que nosotros, ¿no? Por ejemplo, en los museos, y yo lo hablo desde experiencia propia, también en los museos dicen, no, pues sí, esta es la colección de tu nación, míralo, obsérvalo y ya, ¿no? pero no, es un momento de conexión propia con nuestra herencia cultural material, ¿no? Entonces, siento que eso a veces es muy ajeno y no saben cómo abordarlo incluso, ¿no? Entonces, la manera en cómo se puede acompañar es siendo respetuosos, también abriendo nuevas puertas, como lo comentaba, y eso es lo que puedo decir.
I love that very much, to be respectful and empathetic and honoring Indigenous perspectives. Thank you. I ask you, Lauren, the same question. How can rematriation processes be supported? What do you think needs to happen?
I think that in order for rematriation to happen, I think the kind of support we would need um, is number one, if you have a lot of land and you are at a point on your journey that you no longer need it all, to reach out to your local native land conservancy, for example, to return the land, to do your part in creating a better world, because we can do the work, but without the land or access to it, how can the work be done if we have no land to do the work on? We can't save the world on quarter-acre parcels. So that's number one, is returning the land that you don't need. Number two would be, if you don't have the land to return, to be a good neighbor, to to maybe think about your connection to your Earth Mother, because she is who connects all of us, all people of all colors everywhere. For you to change your relationship with her and think about a reciprocal relationship. And respecting the land that you're on, and reaching out to your local tribes and seeing how you can support in the work that they're doing to protect the land. That doesn't take someone with acres and acres of land to give back, but if you see your local tribe fighting to protect a species that is becoming endangered, if you see your tribe fighting sand mining, use your voice. Use, what's in your toolkit, what's accessible to you, but to do nothing is no longer an option. Mother Earth is going to continue without us, with or without us. And it's not time to just sit and wait. We need everybody to do their part on the land that you steward, or that you live on, or that you own, or whatever it is that on the land that you sit on. How can you be better caretaker of that land? And how can you be a better neighbor? Because we all, as humans, want to have a sense of belonging, and your local tribe is the community who is caring for that land. How can you support that community? The information is there. Thank you.
Thank you. Well said. Return the land, be a good neighbor, be a good ally, connect and see how you can help. Thank you so much for your words. And so the question now goes to Rama. What do you think needs to be done for rematriation processes to be supported? What do you think needs to happen?
Baik, terima kasih. Ada banyak hal yang bisa kita lakukan untuk mendorong rematriasi ini, tapi dalam catatan kami mendorong adanya reclaiming, mengambil alih kembali tanah kita. Itu yang pertama, melalui cara-cara yang konstitusional sesuai dengan negara kita masing-masing. Kami mendorong adanya pengakuan dan perlindungan hukum atas tanah adat kami dan juga praktik budaya. Itu yang sedang kami dorong. Karena tanpa itu, seperti kata Lauren tadi, tanpa keterhubungan kita dengan tanah, dengan wilayah adat kita, maka tidak akan ada rematriasi. Kita tidak akan bisa kembali membangun kebudayaan kita. Kita tidak akan bisa terikat kembali dengan leluhur-leluhur kita. Untuk itu, dalam kacamata kami, bahwa tanah itu adalah segala-galanya. Dia adalah ibu bagi setiap kita komunitas masyarakat adat di dunia ini. Kemudian setelah itu kita perlu mendorong pemerintahan-pemerintahan kita untuk memberikan dukungan kepada kita baik secara finansial maupun teknis untuk merestorasi kembali situs-situs budaya yang kita miliki, untuk memetakan kembali wilayah-wilayah adat kita, dan juga mendorong konservasi berbasis masyarakat adat, konservasi hutan berbasis masyarakat adat. Ini penting dilakukan. Kenapa? Karena konservasi hutan modern dengan konservasi hutan dalam perspektif masyarakat adat itu sangat jauh berbeda menurut kami. Di dalam pandangan masyarakat adat, hutan bukanlah sebuah produk, bukan sebuah eh, bukan bukan eh, bahan yang bisa kita jual kemana saja. Tetapi hutan itu adalah tempat kita mencari hidup, tempat kita mencari makan. Di dalam hutan juga ada kehidupan. Inilah pandangan yang sangat berbeda antara masyarakat modern dengan bagaimana masyarakat adat melihat hutan. Sementara di dalam pandangan masyarakat modern kita melihat hutan hanya sebagai satu tempat domestik di mana manusia itu berkuasa penuh atas semua sumber daya alam di situ dan berhak melakukan perusakan untuk menghidupi dirinya. Sementara untuk kami masyarakat adat, kami melihat bahwa kita bisa mengambil sesuatu dari hutan tetapi juga harus memberi kepada mereka. Kita tidak boleh rakus dalam mengelola sumber daya karena kehidupan itu tidak hanya bisa dirawat oleh manusia. Yang hidup di dunia ini bukan hanya manusia, bukan hanya kita sebagai manusia, tetapi ada hutan, ada alam, ada bahkan batu pun juga bagi kami punya nyawa. Kemudian kami juga mendorong adanya pendidikan kepada teman-teman generasi muda. Karena seperti yang kita tahu bahwa profesi-profesi yang dulu pernah ada seperti misalnya tukang ukir, teman-teman pemimpin ritual, teman-teman penutur bahasa adat, itu sudah mulai hilang. Untuk itu perlu mendorong teman-teman generasi muda kita untuk aware dan terbuka terhadap bahwa adat istiadat yang kita miliki, bahwa kita punya identitas. Kemudian kami juga mendorong seperti kata Lauren, perlunya solidaritas, baik itu di skala lokal maupun di skala global. Kita perlu mendorong teman-teman peneliti, pembuat kebijakan, lembaga yang eh, pro terhadap kebudayaan ini untuk berdiri bersama untuk kemudian melihat bagaimana masyarakat adat ini bisa kita lindungi bersama. Kemudian yang terakhir perlu ada pemulihan terhadap trauma sejarah kolonialisme yang kita alami begitu lama, bahkan menurut kami sampai sekarang. artefak-artefak sejarah kita yang pernah dijarah baik itu oleh negara lain maupun negara kita sendiri perlu dikembalikan ke tempatnya, ke komunitas adatnya sendiri. Kemudian kita penting untuk mendorong pendokumentasian ulang tentang kisah-kisah leluhur kita masing-masing. Karena ini bisa menjadi satu alat untuk kita mendorong meningkatkan kesadaran teman-teman generasi kita maupun generasi selanjutnya. Dan kemudian kami juga mendorong untuk kemudian menghidupkan kembali nilai-nilai spiritual di komunitas kita masing-masing. Karena dengan cara itu kita bisa terhubung dengan ancestor atau leluhur kita bersama. Itu Sandy. Terima kasih.
Thank you. I think we have a good blueprint here for the future to share with our allies for what needs to happen to make rematriation be more supported. And so thank you, Rama. And Crystal, the question is for you. So how can the rematriation processes be more supported? What do you believe needs to happen?
I truly believe to support rematriation, we need to go more than just acknowledgement, right? Whether it's a land acknowledgement or just acknowledging it, we need collective, sustained action. So I have 4 things. Returning land and resources. The foundation of rematriation is land back. Returning land back to Indigenous stewardship allows traditional governance, ceremonial, ecological knowledge, but also supporting Indigenous organizations and Indigenous people doing the work. We can't do the work without resources. 2, strengthening Indigenous-led legal and policy tools. Supporting frameworks such as the rights of nature or the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth. Tribal Land Trust, an Indigenous-led conservation agreement, ensures that land, rivers, and ecosystems are protected in alignment with cultural values. Investing in youth and cultural revitalization. Long-term consistent funding for youth leadership, language revitalization, and ceremonial spaces ensures that knowledge is carried forward. This is not charity, it's a restoration of responsibility and reciprocity. And then upholding all treaty and tribal rights. Every treaty made on this land in the world, not just the United States ones, or the ones that the United States selectively remembers, it is a living agreement. Honoring treaties means restoring sovereignty, land, and the ability for Indigenous peoples to determine their futures without interference. How this needs to happen. Rematriation is not just symbolic, it requires a real shift in power and responsibility. So governments, institutions, conservation organizations must relinquish control and support Indigenous leadership and decision making. And at the same time, it is essential to discern who carries this responsibility. Not all Indigenous leaders understand or embody the sacred connection to the land, the waters, and the people. True and wholesome leadership must be grounded in ceremony, humility, and accountability to community. Allies must move beyond this land acknowledgement and redistribute wealth, land, and resources towards Indigenous nations and organizations. And then again, communities must be educated that rematriation is not about extraction. And when these shifts can occur, Indigenous peoples can continue to do what we have always done, care for the land, the waters, and the community as living relatives. So thank you.
Thank you for your beautiful words, Crystal. Powerful, with a great path for the future. Thank you all so very much for sharing your projects, your hearts with us, sharing your cultural knowledge, your cosmology. I can't say enough. My heart is very full. I'm very inspired. Unfortunately, we do not have time for questions from the audience, so I'd like to just take this time to thank you for joining us for this webinar on rematriation, bringing home our past, present, and future. If you like what you learned, please consider making a donation at cs.org/donate to support our work and stay informed about future events through our social media platforms. If you would like to receive our newsletter directly in your inbox and stay informed about our work supporting Indigenous communities around the world, please feel free to subscribe to our newsletter by visiting the link provided in the chat or leave your email in the chat. Thank you and see you next time. Maskanawish, Maskana Iamu.